Hey guys, it's Jance, and yes, I'm back after my 3 to 4 week break. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is the difference between a cold air intake and a short ram intake. As a car enthusiast, I love the sweet spool up sound that an intake makes. On top of that, it's one of the easiest ways of making some horsepower. Short ram intakes are one of the most common modifications when you're looking to increase horsepower. Short ram intakes are designed to reduce as much air restriction as possible. Cars that are stock usually come with either an air box, filter box, or a resonator to reduce induction sound. Short ram intakes are cheaper, somewhat expandable, and are good for high-end power, or usually they begin working at around the high-end RPM range, which means quicker acceleration and more potential power. But the biggest flaw that I think that you guys probably already know about is that short ram intakes are kinda useless. Let me explain. This is an AEM short ram intake on a Mitsubishi. Where the intake is located is where most of the heat hangs out. Short ram intakes can be located close or on top of the engine bay, which is where a lot of heat, like I said just a second ago, is going to cause the cold and dense oxygen to expand, and the short ram intake will actually make your car lose power, which means your cold air intake will just be absorbing your engine's heat, which means there's no power gain there. A short ram intake can only get you 3 to 8 horsepower in theory. I don't think I've heard of a short ram intake produce 10 horsepower, to be honest. Cold air intakes make just as much power as a short ram intake, since the location of the intake is moved outside of the engine bay. A cold air intake is designed to feed the cold and dense air into the engine. The cooler the air, the more efficient your car is and the more power your car makes. I even have a cold air intake myself. A cold air intake has a longer and smoother piping so it can bring cooler air, which is what I actually said from before. The cold air intake can pull water from the ground, which is called hydrolocking. The cold air intake, or in short, it means that the cold air intake is actually located around or close to the ground, which means there's a huge chance of water getting into the cold air intake and the engine hydrolocking if it's able to absorb some of that water through the filter. Anyways, the only problem with cold air intakes is that they're expensive and sometimes difficult to install. So to conclude this comparison, the short ram intake adds some beneficial power over the stock airbox system, but only at around higher RPMs, plus the power begins to decay as the engine heats up more. Since the short ram intake has shorter piping, there's little to no risk of hydrolock. Cold air intakes have a bigger benefit to the engine, and it's the most recommended intake on the market. The cold air intake is good for low-end, mid-end, and high-end torque. I've actually tested that theory out myself. Induction noises are louder, and the CAI or cold air intake makes more power, which is like 10 to 15 horsepower, but the CAI is at risk for hydrolocking since it's near the ground. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to smash that like button and hit subscribe, and I will see. Sorry, my camera cut off. I'll see you next time, everybody. Peace.